So you can either create a new driver by right-clicking anywhere and selecting new driver, and that will give you a blank driver template to create. Or if you've got them, you might have pre-configured a driver that you can right-click on, copy the driver, and the advantage of that is it will have already added a lot of the information like commission templates, the document templates that are in use, and more importantly things like the driver statement style and the billing company that that driver's linked to. When you create a new driver, you'll need to give them a driver ID. That needs to be a unique number, can be a mixture of letters and numbers, and it can't be reused. If you're using the old driver app, you'll need to give them a PIN. The new driver app, they sign on with a password that they create on the app themselves. You'll set the membership or choose between active, suspended and left. If you want to temporarily prevent a driver from working, you can suspend them. You can also color code the drivers. So in the operator program, where you see the list of drivers, you'll be able to make certain drivers stand out with a color coding. So that might be day or night drivers or drivers of a particular class, maybe full-time, part-time, whatever. You'll need to put in the date that that driver joined, and that can be in the past. And when they leave, obviously a leaving time. The invite code we'll talk about in a second, because you can only deal with that once you've completed the driver profile. Obviously you'll need to put in a name, and the home address is important you get that right if you're using the going home feature, and it will try and validate that. So if we click the little binoculars, type in something to search for, and then press the search button, it will then give us our options and we can choose one, and that validated address is now in this profile. There are some options around recording the date of birth. You can make that a mandatory field. You don't have to. And we've got some contact numbers. The mobile phone number is the most important one. If you record a mobile phone number, then you can text and phone the driver from the operator program. And we also log that this mobile number belongs to a driver, so that's useful for things like IVR or call popping. When the driver phones in the office, it can pop the driver's active job. You'll want to set the statements interval, so you can choose the period that the statements are generated here. And basically what that is a reminder. So the system will look at the last date a statement was created, and then it will basically look at this list and say, has it been 7 days or 14 days or whatever since the last statement? And if it has, then if that time has elapsed, then that driver will be marked as being due a statement. It's useful to fill out the driver roster because it's used for the loading screen or when you're allocating a job to a driver. And it won't let you allocate a job to a driver if they can't work at certain times. Most people tend to click sign on anytime, but if you click on the roster button, you'll see that you've got basically a weekly calendar, and you can block out where you can see it's green, the driver is allowed to work. Maybe if this driver didn't work at weekends, we could highlight those days and make them not available. So the way to use these tools is you can either click on the column or row header, and that will select the whole column or row, or you can click on an individual hour, or click and then keep your finger on the mouse and drag, and that will highlight a block, and then you can right click on the block and then change the state on there. So if you have a shift pattern that looks like this, you have got the option to enforce the start time. So if you click on that button, the driver then has a window of the number of minutes that you set here after the start time, in which they are allowed to sign on. And if they don't sign on within that amount of time, then they can be binned, or it will register that on the event. The other option you've got here is a calendar. So within this calendar, you can set the driver's availability or non-availability. So if I wanted to give them a week off in the 1st of March or the first week of March, I can highlight those times and exclude those days. Now this again is used when you're trying to pre-allocate a driver, and if you're pre-allocating a driver in a period where they're not working, then it will tell you can't. If you have the banking module, you'll see this bank tab, and this allows you to enter the credit card details or bank account details for that driver. And the banking module allows you to either pay the driver if your statement process allows them or has a credit that you're due to pay them, Or if the driver owes you money, you can charge their logged credit card with that. But there's also another way of doing that. So if the drivers owe you at the end of a week or after a statement, they can pay directly anyway without having to save a card through here. If you're using Stripe, and they can pay through the driver dashboard by just logging a card on the dashboard. So the next tab allows you to upload a picture of the driver. If you want to upload that, you'll just click on here and then browse to wherever the picture is saved on your local PC. So don't forget you're working on a remote desktop here, so you'll need to just scroll down here and look for your local disk. The Documents tab allows you to record a series of documents that you want to track, and if any of these documents expire, the driver will be prevented from signing onto his phone or signing onto the phone app and from working. You add a new document to the list by clicking the New button and then choosing the document type from this list. And this list is pre-configured on your system and you can add additional documents as needed. So let's add a driving license. Now, if you're waiting for the driver to actually bring you their license, what you can do is you'll notice that some of these fields have got a star on. That means that they're mandatory. You have to put something in there. We could just put in some temporary dates and a little bit of text in there and then save it. So what that means is we can now save this and wait until the driver either brings the document in or uploads it via their app. If they do upload it via their app, they'll see the status change over here. But you can also upload the document, say if they've WhatsApped it or emailed it into the office or sent a physical copy in. You could just click on the upload, scroll to or navigate to where the document is. You'll need to save it on your local hard disk. And I've got a driving license there. Now I can view that document through there. If I'm happy with all of that, I can copy the information from there and type it into my record. And then obviously I'll just put a date into the future here. Now this option, tracking expiry, means that the document date will be tracked, the expiry date will be tracked. If you're not bothered about that, if it's not an important document, you don't need to track the expiry. In which case, if it does expire, the driver will continue working without being restricted. But most of these settings are set through the template anyway. So as a user, you don't need to worry about this. Your system administrator will have set up these templates for you. So if the driver has uploaded the documents and you're happy with that, you've viewed it, you can go to the status now and you can say, yes, I'm happy with that. If there was an issue with it, so if the document was out of focus or it was the wrong document, you could reject it and then you can put a little note in there to explain to the driver why it wasn't suitable. And then you'll just repeat that process, adding the documents one at a time until you've got a record of all of the documents that driver needs. So this section at the bottom allows you to give the drivers a little bit of time to pay a statement. So if the driver lives out, isn't a local driver, for example, you might want to allow them to pay their statement a little bit later, but you might want to put some limitations on that. So for example, I might say I'd be happy for that driver to owe £500 and I'm going to give him 2 days extra to pay that, to come into the office and pay that. If he takes any longer than that, then he won't be able to work. He'll effectively get signed off after those 2 days and he won't be able to sign back on again. And if the value exceeds the overdraft limit, then it won't be able to work until he's cleared that balance. And if you're using the license authority feature, then you'll just need to click or select from this drop list the licensing authority that this driver belongs to. And again, your system admin will have set up all of the different authorities that you work with in this list. So the charges section is basically how you're going to make money out of this driver. And again, all of the options here will have been configured by your system admin. And if you want additional options, you'll need to talk to them to get them to add them. So the way it works is you'll just, for the commission section, this will work out for the different types of payment method, you can have a different commission rate, and you just select that from the ones that are available here. So I'm just going to go for a 10% rate for that, and I'm going to go for a 10% off. Well, we'll go for a 20% rate for that one, And now you can see this one at the moment, the credit card one is greyed out. Now if that happens and you're on Stripe, you have got the option to enable credit card templates. So when you do that, you can go back and now you can choose a credit card commission rate as well. There is also an option to charge, instead of a commission or along with a commission, you can charge a flat fee per job, and you just set that there. And again, I don't have any set on my system, but that could be something like a 10p or 50p per job rate or something like that. Now, the regular charges or rebates section here are repeating charges or rebates. So this is where if you would set up a rent charge, for example. The way you would do that is click New. Again, these all have to be set up beforehand. And I've got a PDA rent there, for example. And you'll see that that's going to charge £10 every week. And I just need to, I can set when I want that to start, if I want it to start in the future. And if it's only a fixed number of payments, I could also set how many payments I want that to be with. But if it was a standard rent, I might just set that to be active from today, and then I'll click OK. It's going to go on forever. You can also do a one-off charge or a one-off rebate. So maybe you might need to charge the driver for something like an accident. So there might be some sort of damage waiver or something they need to pay. Or maybe you need to give them a one-off payment. Maybe there was an issue with a job or some kind of problem with a statement, and the easiest way to correct it is to just give them that money back. So whatever you put on here, you can type in the amount. And again, you can say when you want to apply that, and it could be a repeating one that happens every week or whatever. And you could have that apply for a number of weeks or a number of times. So once you've set that off, you click OK. Oh, I need to set a date. Let's go for today, and it will appear on that list. The Templates tab allows you to select payment templates. So these are basically things that appear on the driver's statement, and they might be formatted in slightly different ways. Most people don't need to have different ones. One of the reasons you might choose to is you might have VAT registered and non-VAT registered drivers, in which case they might need to have slightly different templates to cope with the different VAT status. Either way, you will need to select this tab, and selecting the tab will pre-fill it with all of the templates initially, unless you've got a choice. So even if you haven't created additional templates, you still need to click on the Templates tab. It won't look like anything's happened, everything will be filled in, but actually the clicking of the tab actually fills those in. So if everything is filled in on here, then you can then safely go on to the next tab. So this is important. If you have multiple businesses on your system, you need to make sure that you're connecting the driver to the right business. And the way you do that is through the billing companies. So you can see here I've got a number of different billing companies set up on my system, and they all represent different aspects of my business. So I need to choose the right one for my this particular driver. Now you can, the most practical place where you'll see this change is the driver statements will have a different header. And any documentation that you send to that driver will automatically have the billing company details associated with whatever we select here. So the other key thing that you need to choose on this tab is a driver statement. So mainly most people start with just the default one that is built into the system, but it is possible to configure the driver statements quite a lot. So you can choose different formats, whether they might be portrait or landscape, and different ways of displaying the work or the jobs on those statements. So again, that would be an admin job to create all the different types of statements that you need. And then it's just a case of selecting that particular type from here. If you know the driver's email address, you can type that in here, and that means you can email any documentation that the system generates directly to them, and you can also email things like job details as well. Sometimes you might not want a driver statements to be printed or exported, so you can do that there, but that is quite a rare requirement. So just be mindful about that, and I would suggest that in general you don't need to tick those unless it's a special case. And this section at the bottom, again, are more templates. So most of the time they'll all be pre-filled. There's usually only one of each of these on the system anyway, so you won't need to worry about changing them. And again, it's probably only if if you've got drivers that are VAT registered or not VAT registered, and you've got to deal with those two types of drivers where you would have an option there. Driver attributes are basically going to be a big list, or might not be big, it might be quite a small list of features that a driver might possess. So in this instance, this fleet have got the option to indicate whether a driver's male or female and whether they can do wheelchair work. So in some instances, you might have vehicles that are wheelchair capable, but some of the drivers may be disabled themselves and not able to handle or help with a wheelchair. So you wouldn't give them the wheelchair attribute, even though the vehicle can do the work. And again, you might have some drivers that you like to do account work or not. So you can set up attributes for all of these things and all of these requirements or preferences. And again, they're all set up by the system admin. They're user configurable. You can have as many as you want, and all you need to do is tick them for this particular driver. So the top half of this screen, the restrictions tab, allows you to specify some things that the driver is or isn't allowed to do, and those are fairly self-explanatory. The bottom half will restrict a driver to not work on certain accounts. So if an account appears on this list, it means he's not allowed to do work for that account, which in practical terms means the system will never auto-dispatch a job on an account to that driver. And if you try to manually dispatch a job from that account to this driver, it would give you a warning message. And you just simply search for the account and then apply that. And then once it appears in this list, it means that driver won't be getting work from that account. So within the system, you've got a concept called system parameters. So the system parameters basically determine how the system itself overall will behave. But maybe you've got some drivers or groups of drivers that you want to have a slightly different experience. So it might be that they do a different type of work to your normal driver, or maybe you've got some drivers that you just want to keep a tighter rein on. And the overrides tab here allows you to do that. So you can set some of the global parameters, you can override them here and have a specific setting for this driver. The way that you would do that is basically to double click on one of the items, and then it gives you a window. You can then choose the new value that you want, and you'll see that the override value appears in this column. And also you'll notice that the green icon that is next to the driver in the drivers list will have a little cross in it, and that will tell you that that driver has got some overrides that are active. So there's usually only two types. It's either a yes no one or one with a number on it, and it's the same principle really. You just double click and then just type in a new number. So at this point, hopefully you've already added your vehicles onto the system, because now we're going to indicate which vehicles this driver is allowed to drive. Normally, most drivers are owner drivers and they just drive their own vehicle. So if you just want to add one vehicle, you can click new, search for either part of the registration number or the vehicle ID if you know it. So I'm just going to type in part of the registration number and press tab. I can now select from all the vehicles with that partial match and then click OK. So now my driver is going to be able to use his phone app with this vehicle. If you own all of the vehicles and the drivers can drive all of the vehicles, you can just tick drives any vehicle. And that means that any vehicle on your system, the driver will be able to type in that or select that vehicle in the phone app and do work with that vehicle. If you can see the owns tab, it means you've enabled owner statements on your system. Now an owner statement is slightly different to a normal driver statement. So the scenario here is that you've got a driver that owns one or more vehicles, and he's running them on your fleet, but not necessarily driving them himself. Now, what the owner statement does is, rather than you have to work out all of these separate driver payments, so let's say, for example, it's black cab, 3 shifts, so there's 3 drivers driving that vehicle. You can offload the responsibility of collecting all the payments and passing on the payments to those 3 drivers to the owner. So basically what this does is it creates a special type of statement, one statement with all of the drivers that drive this particular vehicle on it, and the owner of the vehicle can then liaise with the 3 drivers to work out the finances. It works in the same way as the drives tab, so that you can just simply add a new one, search for the registration, And I'm just going to do the same thing again. Partial vehicle reg, and then it finds a vehicle and I can add it to the list. Now that's going to create a statement for this vehicle rather than all of the drivers. Finally, the last tab is driver notes. So this is just giving you an opportunity to write in a few notes that aren't displayed anywhere else. They're just for your own records.